Demi Sheffield, and you're listening to LBC. Does the wealth of our political leaders matter? Can you be too rich to govern? And if so, why? Isn't this just the politics of envy? This is the question we're discussing this hour. Give me a call, 0345 60 60 973. Because this week we learnt that Rishi Sunak earned almost $5 million in the past 3 years, according to a summary tax return he released while Westminster was busy focused on Boris Johnson. Do you care? Does this information make you feel Rishi Sunak cannot take the right decisions for you? Do you feel disenfranchised by his wealth? Or it is Westminster that you think is out of touch? It's not because of wealth. It's sort of been locked in London and politicians talking to politicians. Because Sunak and his wife are estimated to have a combined wealth of $730 million. And the revelations that she previously held non-dom status seriously dented his leadership ambitions. She did go on to commit to paying UK tax on all her worldwide income. Did that matter to you at the time? Because it's interesting now, Rishi Sunak is not saying he's going to abandon non-dom status, but Keir Starmer is saying he is. But equally this week, Keir Starmer also released his tax return. He, like Rishi Sunak, had promised to do so, showing he had earnings of $360,000 in the last 2 years, and it would have been higher when he worked as a public prosecutor. It puts him in the top 1% of earners. And he was then forced to admit that he was also, like Rishi Sunak, not planning on changing capital gains tax, for instance. John in Worcester, what do you think? Does the wealth of our political leaders matter? Can you be too rich to govern?
I think that what we're discussing here is whether democratically elected leaders should be judged based on what's already known by the public. It's interesting, and I'd like to thank you very much for having the guests on already who you have, because they're a very broad range of ideas. George Eaton, for example, was educated in an independent school, and I would argue people like that have links to, wealth. And would he like to decide who our leaders are? I think we already knew what wealth Rishi Sunak had before we elected him, and thus we should be able to decide who our leaders are. Liz Truss, for example, I think was a brilliant example of a leader, because she was the first Prime Minister we've had not to go through some sort of fast-track secondary education. And she was a Republican, for example, when she was a member of the Liberal Democrats, and she really pushed for a lot of progress, I would argue. So, David Mellor, who I thought was a very interesting person to listen to earlier, he went to a comprehensive school, and he had a lot to say. He was talking about a second house. When I was younger, my parents had a second house, partly because they were split up. But, are we going to punish people for their enterprise? That's what I think we should ask. I think we should ask, do the public know what's good for them? Yes, they do. They know exactly what they're voting for, and they deserve to get what they vote for. And I think we have an amazing leader, Rishi Sunak, because of it.
So in his case, you think he shouldn't be punished for his enterprise, or indeed actually his parents more than anything, because they sent him to a private school, Winchester. And you don't think that the sort of enormous wealth he has of $730 million will make him feel to many that he's out of touch. He's got a heated swimming pool, a driver, his wife is worth millions. You think that's not going to matter?
Well, he's our elected Prime Minister, so he would be our Prime
he was
Minister.
Elected only by the Tory membership, remember? He hasn't done Yes, but he hasn't done a general election.
I mean, he's in his constituency, he's won elections. He's gone through all the rules in the playbook. There's nothing that he's done which goes against the rules of this country and law and democracy, I would argue. If we want to change democracy, we can change democracy, and that's a separate discussion, I would argue. But we've decided for him to be our leader. We knew exactly what finances he had. And I think to say that he shouldn't be leader, or he's not fit to be leader because of what money he has, is saying that the public aren't fit to decide for themselves.
But do you think, let's look across more broadly at the cabinet, let's say, do you think it is a good idea? So you just brought up education there. And you brought up the backgrounds of the educational backgrounds of the two people we had on. Would you like to see in a cabinet, at the very least, a broad range of backgrounds there? Never mind diversity.
I think that what's most important is that the government of the UK represent the people of the UK, which is why we have democracy. So I think that's the most important thing. I think that what diversity we have should be representative of the backgrounds of people within the UK. And, like, for example, within the media, we see that 43 of the top 100 most influential news editors and broadcasters went to fee-paying schools. So I feel like we're seeing a sort of spin which is thrown at us to say that, the people who are in power shouldn't be in power because of the money they have, because they have the power to say that. Whereas I would argue that, Liz Truss, she went to a comprehensive school, and the government that she put together, they were thrown out. And I mean, okay, they were thrown out by, their party because they sort of broke the economy. But I feel like, I'm not helping myself there.
No, I mean, there was a reason why she was removed. A very good one.
I think that's highly debatable whether she should have been. That's
a different topic, which I'm not sure you're going to find much sympathy with here. I mean, our economy was tanking. I don't think any party was going to survive for very long when you're tanking the economy. I think, honestly, the people around her thought she had taken the country to a very dangerous place.
All the markets felt threatened by her because she went to a comprehensive school. Well,
yes. But, John, thank you so much. I'm going to go to Jed in Salford in Greater Manchester now. Jed, you were just listening to John. What's your feeling on this topic? Does the wealth of our political leaders matter?
Yeah, well, in the case of Sunak, I think it can be to his benefit. Now, listen, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Labour supporter, and I will be voting Labour at the next election. But he